Wall Street Unplugged looks beyond the regular headlines heard on mainstream financial media to bring you unscripted interviews and breaking commentary direct from Wall Street right to you on Main Street.
What's going on out there? It's September 11th. I'm Frank Curzio. It's Wall Street Unplugged podcast where we break down the headlines and tell you what's really moving these markets. Sad day, the anniversary, 9/11. It's one of the saddest days, I could say, in the history of our country, but definitely in our lifetimes, in my lifetime. And being a New Yorker, knowing people that died there, just every time, remember September 11th, I try to be optimistic because I visited that site 2 days after it happened. And, I mean, the scene is crazy. It's undescribable. I wish I could describe it for you. The rubble, the smoke coming out, the search for people. But the one thing that I take away from that as positive is the unity and how all stores and restaurants open, free food, people were coming from all over the country, even all over the world to help, just this unity, which was amazing. So, we always say never forget. It's a big day, especially for people who live in New York and for everyone, right? Americans, everyone around the world. But I just want to start out with that and say just never forget. And it is a sad day. And so hate to start the podcast off like that. But we got Daniel Creech on. What's going on, buddy? How's everything?
Hey, what's happening, Frank? Yeah, it is a rough day there. Prayers to family and friends and everybody who lost loved ones on that day. That is a bummer. On a lighter note, Frank, I'm going to start taking a boat to work on my commute because it's going to rain every day, evidently, down here. I know we live in a swamp, but we normally don't get the dreary overcast all day, rain off and on. I don't know how many inches of rain we've gotten in the last week.
3 weeks. It's rained every day in the past 3 weeks. Frank. Every single day in the past 3 weeks. It's insane. And it's easy to keep track because it's 3 weeks because I'm getting my driveway. I'm getting it sealed. Your yard? Oh. No, I'm getting it sealed. And the guy's like, I got to come when it stopped raining 3 weeks ago. He's like, I just need to stop raining for a day and a half. And it has like every day. And it's pouring some of these days. It's not like this light drizzle.
Yeah, it's not going to either. It's wild. So I may need a Curzio watercraft or something.
I know. How do you remain optimistic when every day you come in, it's pouring out? Anyway, we talked about the country and unity in September 11th.
Speaking of unity, Frank, let's talk about the debate.
Holy shit. What a crazy. I mean, what were your thoughts on the debate? I think, man, I got to tell you, I think everybody, I haven't seen the numbers yet, but I'd be surprised with 67. I mean, everyone was watching it, right? They were just because we wanted to really see it. But I guess we'll start off with you and your thoughts and what you thought about the debate, because there's lots of opinions out there. I have very strong opinions about it. But Daniel, let's start with you. I'm curious. Who do you think won the debate?
I think the major takeaway will be that the vice president won the debate last night. I think it went in stages. So when I listened to probably about the first 40 minutes last night, I went to bed because I'm getting old, Frank, and I go to bed early. And then I listened to the remainder of the replay on my way into work this morning. And I definitely think that if you only listen to the first 40 minutes, she definitely won that round if you split it up in kind of 30 segments. So she won the first 30 minutes. I thought he did better in the second 30 minutes. I thought he had a better closing argument, but I doubt many people stayed in tune that much longer. I don't think a lot of people watched all 90 minutes of this. I would be shocked. We'll look for those stats. I do think that it was hers to lose, meaning that she had a lot more favors and kind of tailwinds in her corner. She was on a favorable network. The moderators are very anti-Trump, but everybody knew that. She's also a woman. I'm not digging on any women out there. Hold your horses. I'm simply saying it looks a lot easier and better from a national standpoint to see a woman talk tough to a man than it does a man talk tough to a woman. So there's a lot of spinning pieces there. Just like on this podcast, and I'm guilty of this, Frank, you understand this. You prepare, you have ideas, you think of how it's going to play out and how it's going to sound. You get not lost. I thought both of them did pretty good. They both went on little rabbit trails, as everybody does. But I do think he missed a couple of key points to really drive the nail home. However, it's very hard to nail down somebody that doesn't have any policies. And when you don't really stand for anything, it's easy to deflect blame and all that. CNN's out with 63% of the viewers voting viewers, Frank. They make a quote to say that Kamala, vice president, won the debate. She is seeing a small surge actually a pretty large surge on the betting sites. We'll see how that goes. But I want to ask you what you thought of the debate, Frank, and I want to then dig into sectors about if Miss Harris is going to be the first woman president.
I view this as it's almost like when you see a brand new pitcher come out and pitch for the very first time in the pros.
Baseball?
In baseball. I'm going to use a baseball analogy here. And usually that pitcher does fantastic because you don't have the playbook on him. And then once you get the video and a playbook, you start learning his weaknesses. You start really learning his best pitches. You start learning his tells. When you have a candidate that basically has no policies, okay, and who flip-flopped on everything, which we know just watching TV, right? Everybody knows that. And, going in when you're going against someone who does so many campaigns and you know exactly how he's going to respond to every single question, the Democrats did an unbelievable job. They really did an unbelievable job preparing. And if you think that Kamala did not win that debate, you just have to look at Truth Social and that stock, which is down 20% if you think otherwise. Okay, she clearly won that debate. My 4 takeaways, or that's one of the takeaways, other takeaways, and I've had 4 of them, is ABC showed the world how biased the media is, if anyone was questioning, because I feel like sometimes we really don't realize that. Despite debating 3 people last night, which Trump did, and everybody clearly saw that, he should have been more prepared and missed a ton of opportunity. My last point is this did not sway anyone. I think this was a big debate for Donald Trump because, look, the Republican side gets it. They understand. There's no policy over there. They feel like, absolutely things are much better than they were 4 years ago than they are now on almost every single metric, right? I mean, you can look at the economy, you can look at inflation, you can look at safety and wars and stuff like that, almost every single metric. I think he had a chance because when I look at the Democratic Party, I think there's moderate Democrats that look at their party and say, holy shit, we are way, way over to the left. And you have a little opportunity, and that's all you need to sway those. And he lost that opportunity just then. Not over by any stretch. I don't think anyone was swayed, but I wish I coached Trump for this debate because whoever coached Kamala should get $1 million raise. I mean, she baited him perfectly. She baited him perfectly and he fell for it, right? When she said people leave his campaign rallies, people didn't even leave his campaign rally when he got shot. There was snipers on the stage and people weren't leaving, right? So right away he fell for that. He taking a jab of Wharton specifically. We know you create these economic things. Because economic people, they said this. She specifically said Wharton because that's where he graduated. That's his college. So right away, So he started getting angry. I would disagree. I think he did well in the first 20 minutes, and then he kind of came off the rails a little bit. And at the end, his closing statement was good.
But do you think anybody saw the closing statement?
Yeah, I think a lot of people stayed tuned for the closing statement because I thought there was interest there. But when I look at ABC and the bias, even with that, he needed to drive home certain points. I will say this about ABC: if you're a moderator, because it's such a shit show, if you're a moderator, right, your job is to ask questions and let these guys go, and then moderate it, control the debate, make sure, the timing and stuff like that, no one's going over and make sure everyone's. Your job is not to fact check one candidate and not the other. And not only that, if you're going to fact check, make sure you're right, because they weren't right when they fact checked. It's almost like they had the questions, they knew what Trump was going to say, and they made sure they had the fact check there because they knew what he was going to say. They knew exactly what he was going to say, right? Which is terrible. They did little to talk about the economy, corporate taxes, no tax on tips. Something for me, what I think is big is every single Democrat voted that men are able and transgenders are able to compete against women. And I would say 90% of the population in America do not agree with that, and especially women, and you want to appeal to that, right? So when I look at the fact checking and the things that they were saying about late stage abortion, they were wrong when they fact checked, right? The corrupt FBI, right? They were saying the FBI said crime is not going up in the U.S. There's no statistics on that. Then why the hell are we seeing mass migration from every major city? Why are people flooding into Florida? Why are people flooding into Texas, right? So despite that, Trump had the opportunity to come back and he didn't do it, right? I mean, when she said, that Trump wants to change the Constitution, and he's a threat to the Constitution. Bring up how she wants to expand the Supreme Court. You had a chance to bring up that he brought up really quickly, but kind of let it go. She became the nominee with no votes. She wants to take guns from people. So there was ways to really spin it. When she said guns, she has a gun, but she wants to implement mandatory gun buybacks, right? Just you had to know the facts. He needed to ask her why she was flipping on fracking. They asked her really quick, and she pivoted immediately. When it was his turn to speak, he should have said, "Could you answer the question? Because we're in Pennsylvania, which is the swing state, and both of them say that need to win the election. We need to know: are you flip flopping? Why did you flip?" He should have said it, right? He had the opportunity to go because they didn't follow up with her at all, right? You saw the bias there. The geopolitics, it should have been a layup for Trump. I mean, look at the wars that we're in, right? And she was like, well, I met with Zelensky and went to Europe. Okay, well, you did that. I would have said, why didn't, you're visiting Europe and Zelensky more than you visited the war. The walls are. What, for immigration. Why weren't you there? A major point, which she said, I think he could have really crushed her because I think this is his strong suit, is talking to other nations and people fear him and shit. He's right. He's a great negotiator. Probably why we weren't in any wars. But she said that she didn't meet with Putin. That was a very, very big point. If you really, because you want peace. People are fucking dying, right? You want peace. Ukraine had the chance right away to prevent this war. There was a peace agreement on there, and now any deal now is going to result in much more Russia's favor, right? Because they're winning that war, no matter what anyone tells you. They're really winning that war. But the fact that she said she didn't meet Putin means how could you stop this war if you don't meet both sides? And you're never going to come to agreement if you're not going to meet both sides and sit down with them. The fact that she never met with Putin was huge. I think she could say, how could you ever solve this problem if you're not meeting with both sides? Afghanistan, I thought that's the immediate pivot no matter what. Afghanistan's immediate pivot, right? Because that was a disaster. I think most people agree with it. What happened, and yet she didn't even pivot. She actually bragged about it. And Trump had the opportunity to say, the military to me is the most sacred thing in the world. I feel that way, and I'm probably a little biased because I just went to National Security Conference in the War College, saw colonels graduate, lieutenants graduate to colonels. These are people that don't give a shit who is president. They do their job. They don't want to thank you. The reason why we're able to watch this debate, the reason why we have all of our freedoms are because of these people, right? It's sacred. And there's 13 people that died with the Afghanistan withdrawal, which was a disaster. She hasn't even visited these people. She hasn't even said, I'm sorry. She hasn't even said, listen, sorry for your loss or anything. He could have drove home that point. Even when it comes to immigration, instead of all these people flooding them, all right, go personal. Talk about people. We know how there was illegal immigrants that have raped people, that killed people. You could have got more personal. So he didn't really do a very good job. On abortion, she said how nobody should tell a woman what to do with their body. Yet your government told tons of women, nurses, all kinds of people, you better take the shot or you're getting fired. They mandated it, okay? You told them what they needed to do with their body. And let me tell you something about those statistics. They're published. Okay, they're published. The statistics of people who took that shot who are dying right now, who are getting sick right now, right? There's no drug in the world that doesn't list all the fucking effects they have, right? Except for the fucking vaccine, right? Let's get real, right? They're published, but they're not publicized. Okay, so you could have gone into that part a lot more with COVID. But the first 15 minutes I won, I just thought that they did a very, very poor job, ABC, because we want to know more about the economy. We want to know about, key issues. I thought he did a good job with tariffs. The fact that, I created tariffs, you guys hate them, but yet you didn't take it off because we're making so much money off of it, right? I mean, I thought he did a good job there. But this ABC, I thought was an absolute freaking disgrace. It was a disgrace. Just, ask them tough questions. Ask them questions Americans want to know. We don't want to know about the racism. We don't want to know about dogs and stuff like that. And again, they had the perfect stat too. Well, we just reached out to this person, right? That was very strong for the Republicans because I think Republicans believe, again, we see it with the media and Justice Department going after him. And this is clear that this wasn't a fair debate. There will not be another debate. I mean, Harris is crazy to debate again after this, but I think she's getting a bump up. But I don't think it's going to hurt his base at all. And I don't think he did anything to persuade, which he had an opportunity moderate Democrats, because even Bill Maher talks about freaking how far left are we? This is insane, right? I mean, you've seen Democrats come out. This is insane what we're doing with DEI and handing money to people and stuff like that. So, when I look about this, when I look at this, it's I think he failed. I think he wasn't as prepared. I think he was caught off guard. And to me, he clearly lost the debate. I mean, even with January 6th, when she said, it's a worse attack since the Civil War, it's a fucking joke. I mean, there's 600,000 people died. One person died during September 6th. And you did it on the anniversary of September 11th, where 3,000 Americans died. 3,000 Americans died. You had the opportunity to say, really? That is the worst attack since the Civil War? I mean, now you could have brought up September 11th and brought that into your favor. So they knew exactly what he was going to say. They knew how to trigger him. And it's hard to attack a person who really doesn't have any policies right now. Nobody knows. So I think for the American people who are really in the middle, they just wanted to know more. And I don't think they got that, which is sad, because we should be able to get that. We should get an honest debate. And there's no way there's going to be an honest debate or anything. I thought CNN did a great job the last debate. But, why am I so focused on this? Why am I looking at all these details? Because it matters. I mean, look at some of the stock. Look at the stock market today. The stock market's coming down a lot. Why? Because it's going to be, Harris wins mean more regulation, right? You're going to see less deals get done. You're going to see solar stocks are on fire right now. You're going to see, energy. Why, energy's going higher. You say, well, because of the hurricane and stuff like that's coming in. Francis, well, not necessarily, because if you're really going to cut production like they did for 3 years and kind of open it up the last 6 months, because oil prices went all the way over 80. But if you cut that, it's going to result in prices going much, much, much higher, right? So you're seeing oil go higher. So the market is impacted with this. And seeing his True Social platform, if you think that he won the debate and you're biased or whatever, I don't want to be biased at all. His stock would not be down 20%. I mean, it was leading up because they thought he was going to win that debate. He didn't win the debate. He didn't have a good day. I don't think it's going to hurt him as much on in terms of people not voting for him because of this, but we'll see. And let's see if Kamala starts going around campaigning, doing interviews. She still hasn't done interviews. If I was Trump, the best thing for him to do is go on every single influencer's platform. Everyone will have him. She will not do that because that's an unbiased thing, and they're going to ask her real questions, and she'll never answer them, right? That's the point of this. This is why she hasn't spoken to the media. This is why she hasn't gone out there. That's your advantage, because these social media platforms have not millions, but tens of millions of people on them, and you can go literally to over 100 of them. And if you're doing that, that's a significant advantage. But overall, when I look at what's going on with the market and stuff like that, I just, I think it's clear that he lost that debate, and he didn't do himself any favors. I know it was 3-on-1, but he could have did a lot better job in terms of preparation and knowing what she was going to say, because put her feet to the fire. She didn't answer any questions of all the flip-flops, of all the policies, of everything she's doing. And he had that opportunity, because ABC was not going to fucking do that. They were not going to ask her those tough questions. But he could have just asked them or said, answer the question. How come you didn't answer the question? He just highlighted it, because I think a lot of people wanted those answers.
Yeah, well, Frank, we can want something and wish in one hand and want in the other. You know what I mean? Hey, markets are selling off hard. Dow's down over 1%. S&P's down 1.5%. NASDAQ's down 1%. Gold is down, Frank. Everything's down.
Hey, look at crypto. Crypto's selling off tremendously too.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And I love that Mike Novogratz is like, she's great. She's let me tell you something about Mike Novogratz. I'm going to be honest with you.
Frank's fired up.
I'm going to be honest with you.
Just a minute. Novogratz is Galaxy Digital CEO, big crypto play that I have been a fan of and we've recommended. So
let me tell you something.
Now
if he endorses, and he's a pure Democrat, right? And he's pretty left. And he was like, I don't know how I could do, because you have Elizabeth Warren just totally like crypto's dead. Gensler crypto attacking you. We're going after banks illegally. If he really supports this party, there's not one person in the world that should own his stock or have any money at his company, because basically his company is going to crash. Okay. Now, we may see a flip-flop because we saw more money come into super PACs from crypto than any place else, which that's really surprised the Democrats. And that's why they held the Kamala for Crypto. Did you see that? That webinar?
Yep.
Kamala for crypto now because of the money. And we know that both sides of politicians, both sides, I don't care who you are, money is more important than their mother, than their families. They'll shoot their mother in the head for money. We know that. We know that from both sides. That's the way that they are. That's all they care about. And to see the amount of money coming in from crypto, that's why you're seeing, a big flip-flop from Democrats who are against it. I do think they would be favorable on crypto because of the amount of money that's coming in anyway. I don't think, but crypto is selling off. So you're seeing this impact a lot of sectors. I just think when I look at this debate, and this is the final thing I'm going to talk about, it's very simple. It was very simple for Trump to say, for 85% of Americans, maybe 90%, the 10%, the rich, you got to exclude them. But for the middle class, lower income people, is your life better today than it was 4 years ago? And there's not one data point you could point to and say yes. You can't point to inflation. You can't point, inflation's up tremendously. We talk about that because CPI just came out and all the headlines are like, look, this is the lowest inflation. Holy shit. We're going to tackle that in a second. You're looking at crime rates in major cities, right? I mean, safety, taking rights out of parents for their kids and stuff like that with transgender and stuff like that, and pushing there's just, there's no data points that you can look at that say, yes, things are better right now for the majority of Americans than they were then. And Trump had the chance to drive that home, and he drove it home in the last 2 minutes of his speech, which I thought was really late. You could have just kept pounding that. But you're seeing the difference. It impacts stocks. That's why we have to talk about this stuff, and we have strong opinions about it. But you're seeing the reaction in the stock market, and a lot of that has to do with the results from the debate last night.
Before we get into more stocks and market reaction, Frank, let's talk about this better off now than 4 years ago. CPI data came out. Frank, the big headline is CPI is only rising at 2.5%. That's the lowest level, Frank. The lowest level since February of 2021. That's a big deal. That's a good headline. Core, remember, think of core as stripping out the unnecessary things that we don't use in our lives, like food and energy. And that is up 3.2%. That is unchanged versus last month's in July. Frank, taking away from this, do you think, I know you don't think anybody's better off, but the big takeaway here is we have the Fed all guaranteed to cut interest rates next week. Mm-hmm. The market's basically saying, hey, they're not doing 50 basis points now. They're only going to do the 25. I personally think that's a good thing. I want your opinion on that in just a moment. But did anything shock you in this report?
What shocks me is the headlines that are coming out and how political they are. And we got to stop that shit, because you can't say inflation is you're right, inflation's coming down. But when you really look at the numbers, if you strip out food and energy, it's up 3%. We still have a 3 handle on it, So the headline was great because it has a 2 handle, 2.5%. If you look at prices, they're up tremendously. Okay, they're up over 20%. They're up 22%, and this is the CPI. If you look at the CPI, people look at the percentage, and that's what gets highlighted. But there's an actual number, right? So the number of the CPI, which is an index, it was 257 is the number, and this was at the last month, and this is at the end of December in 2019, and it's 314 today. That means prices have gone up 22%. For Americans, right? This is an immediate tax on them, right? You can say, well, wage growth hasn't kept up a little bit, but not really. And it's, instead of coming down, it's still fucking going up. It's going up by 3%, right? So if you're looking at it and you say, and you're cheering this number, your prices are still going up. They're still going up. And you can say, well, a lot of rentals. Well, that's because the way you structured that index is to make sure that it's very difficult. And why is rental income? Why is housing over 30% of the CPI? Really? Why is it over 30%? I mean, we know what rentals, right? Because it's stayed, they revised it so many times and revised the way they calculate the CPI. But if you're looking at rentals specifically, they made it more of a component because rentals almost never go up by more than 2% annually, dating back to the 80s. And that's why they changed it. Even when we saw housing prices rise tremendously, Dan, we saw the housing price rise tremendously leading up to the credit crisis. And even during that time, housing prices rose. Rentals were only going up like 3%. We didn't see 8%, 9% increases year over year like we saw in 2021, 2022, right? When they opened up the economy, we had this massive inflation. So, that's stubbornly high, but to really have headlines like, hey, this is great, inflation is coming down, you're doing better. There's nobody, I don't know anyone really, even if you're listening to this, that can honestly say that the economy is really strong right now and it's great. It's dangerous. I mean, we're looking at CPI data, we're looking at PPI data, right? Tomorrow. Yep. And then we look at jobs data, right? In the jobs market. These are lagging indicators, guys. These are lagging indicators, right? If you look at the jobs and how much they've been revised, it's a fucking joke the way they calculate this shit. It's a joke. It's a disaster. You know what? But let's look at a leading indicator, which came out 2 days ago, which nobody's really paying attention to. It's the NFIB Small Business Optimism Index. Okay, you probably never heard of it. It came in at 91.2 versus 93.7. And you might say, okay, well, that doesn't look that bad. No big deal. That's the largest amount it fell by in 2 years. Okay, this is a leading indicator. This is how small businesses feel. Okay, this is how, if you look at the beige book, guys, if you get a chance, it's probably the most boring shit in the world, but really, we highlighted some of it if you break it down by state and what each state is saying about unemployment, how they're not going to hire, how dangerous it is out there. I mean, it was disgusting, the beige book. It's disgusting. The Fed has to have access to this. So your point, Daniel, of, it's going to be 25, 50. Does it matter? 50 might signal, the Fed's a little nervous, especially after we just saw the banks come down yesterday, which we'll get to in a minute. I believe they should go 50 basis points. There's all the evidence there. We're seeing it. The bond market's telling you to go faster, but they're probably going to go 25. That's a consensus. They might do that, and then, whatever. But either way, you're going to see rates come down. And I think if they do 25, I really think that they're going to do 50 in November, despite the election, despite all that crap, because I think you're starting to see the deterioration in the economy. You're really starting to see it, and it's happening fast. I mean, NFIB, that optimism index, you're seeing things change on a dime, right? Even the banks with Ally Financial, we can get into that now. But, looking at what the Fed's going to do, I think a 25 basis point cut is likely now. They should do 50. They'll probably do 25. And when they do it, I think you're going to see the market actually sell off on the news. It's going to be muted, and it'll probably sell off on the news, depending on how much we come down today, because we're starting to really sell off now. It might be oversold going into tomorrow, but let's see. I mean, let's see what the Fed does. I think it's going to be a 25 basis point cut, but they have a lot on their plate now. They really do.
What shocks me, and is not funny, haha, but it is funny irony type deal, is that now markets are going to pull back. Markets can pull back. A lot of volatility, a lot of algorithms. There's a lot of noise there. Stocks trade 5 days a week. No big deal. If the CPI would have came in much weaker, then I still think we would have seen a sell-off today, because it's just funny how nervous investors are in Mr. Market. You go from being nervous that the Fed is too far behind the rate cutting cycle and you need a 50 basis point cut, to now you're disappointed that they're only going to do 25. So now we're going to sell off and throw a little tantrum and stuff like that. That's fine. Now, I do think that a 50 basis point is going to happen this year, Frank. Unlike you, not putting words in your mouth, I think they are totally political. Not that you believe that they aren't in general, but I absolutely know that they are. I just know this in my heart of hearts. And if Jerome Powell wants to play the hero, Frank, he would come out and cut 50, because now nobody expects it on the marketing odds. So now he should come out if he wanted to play the hero. And these guys' egos are just as big as any other politician. I do think that's a good opportunity for him. But I think that there's a 50 basis point coming this year because of the slowdown, the revision in jobs you talked about, and then what I want to get to here, we're going to get into the banking system. I understand Ally Financial yesterday dropped about 18 to 20%. Because they're at a conference and they warned about delinquencies going up, default rates going up, net interest margins and credits going down. But Frank, what stood out to me, and don't get me wrong, the jump, what I liked is they said, hey, versus our own expectations. Okay, so auto delinquencies soared 20 basis points, net interest income dropped 10 basis points versus our own estimates in the last 2 months. That's significant. But the reason they said is because of a hurting consumer with high inflation. Mm-hmm. No offense, we all know that. We can feel that. But what stood out to me is he said because of the recent weakening in the labor force. Mm-hmm. That is why, and I think you're spot on with the 50 basis point coming in November or even October if those guys meet in October, because it's the rate of change everybody's worried about. And while unemployment's up about 1% year over year, the majority of those gains have come in the last few to 6 months. Yeah. And I think that's what's going to scare everybody. And that will cause markets to go down, and that will generate incredible buying opportunities, because we're not going to fall forever. We might have a significant pullback, especially if the market really thinks which policies, although we don't really know a whole lot of policies, will take a hold. But you can clearly see the reaction to the Fed, the markets, and the upcoming data. But I do think I'm getting very excited on a pullback for markets in general. And I think this is going to play out very well for investors that can be just a little bit patient.
Yeah. So Ally, I'm quoting here, said borrowers are struggling with the high inflation and cost of living. And now, more recently, a weakened employment picture. Okay, that's a quote. Yeah. So the stock did get nailed. One point I want to bring up before I get to is on September 3rd, right? Goldman Sachs, who's, again, is the premier bank, did it perfectly, right? They removed this name from their conviction list. Nice timing. But the writing was on the wall with this company. I mean, it's a stock. You can see last quarter, which was mid-July, I think they reported, they said that provisions for credit losses increased to $457 million, reflecting higher net charge-offs. That was last quarter what they said, right? So they see the deterioration. But I think when it comes to the Fed, they underestimate the speed at which consumer sentiment can change. And it changes on a dime. Like boom, boom, boom. It changes on a dime. And you're seeing that happen. You're seeing a lot of people close their wallets. It's no coincidence. It's almost every single company, even the ones that are doing good. Even if you look at the Walmarts, the Targets, the Rosses, the Burlingtons, right? The Costcos, they all said that you're seeing a change in consumer behavior. They're telling you that where they weren't that aggressive with that even a quarter ago, and especially not 2-3 quarters ago. You're seeing it change very, very rapidly. The costs for everyone are going up. Insurance costs are fucking a joke. Healthcare costs are effing a joke. It's just the costs of these things continue to go up and hurt consumers, and they're starting to close their wallet. And a lot of people, I mean, listen, if the dollar stores aren't a tell, I mean, these are people with, the average income, whatever. It's I think I heard $35,000, $40,000 a year, whatever it is. These are people, they're not shopping. They can't even afford to go to the dollar store. Right. So you're seeing it. And now what's going to happen is it's going to go up the ladder of the middle income, which is this big demographic. Right. But it's going up. It's going up. Obviously, if you're at the top of the middle income, I think you're worth like $2 million now. That's how high the middle. It's anywhere from $2 million to making probably $50,000, $55,000. It's crazy how big the demographic is. So people just talk about the middle class like it's just one, it's either good or bad. There's a huge amount of people. It's the biggest demographic. Right. So, and then I see J.P. Morgan's, their president, Daniel Pinto, yesterday said their earnings estimates are too optimistic. Net interest income would fall as, the Fed begins to cut rates. Expenses are going to be higher. And J.P. Morgan got hit. And the whole banking sector got hit pretty hard because you had this news. And what do you think of when it comes to sentiment, right? When it comes to sentiment, you're like, holy shit, here it comes with the banks again. Before you get there, again, and you should, I don't blame anyone for thinking like that. You should. I mean, I remember September 11th day when they first opened up air travel again and airplanes. I'm not even kidding you. I mean, when people saw airplanes, they stopped and was scared and thinking they were going to freaking crash in front of them. I mean, because that's how crazy it is because of that traumatic event that just happened, right? So when you're looking at sentiment, how quick it could change, people are going always default to the worst possible thing that they've ever saw, which was the credit crisis, right? And they're going to say, holy shit, here it comes with the banks. And you have everyone with headlines scaring the shit out of you because that's what sells. Just a few data points if you're worried about JP Morgan, by the way. If you think the banking sector is going to, the stocks could fall. The stocks could fall here. But if you're worried about a banking crisis, I'm just going to share a couple of numbers with you. JP Morgan will generate over $51 billion, not in revenue, in net income this year on revenue of $170 plus billion. That's up from $35 billion in net income and $126 billion in revenue from just 2 years ago. JP Morgan is fine. If their estimates come down or they think people are a little overly optimistic, big deal. Maybe it's not $51 billion, maybe it's $49 billion in net income you generate. These banks have never been stronger in history. Their balance sheets have never been stronger because of the rules in place and how much they have in capital that they have to keep on the balance sheets. They've never been stronger. There's no threat. You can't tell me a company generates $51 billion in net income. And if you look at the 4 banks and net income, could estimates come down? Yes. Could you see slower growth? Yes. As interest rates go higher, net interest margins are going to get hit. This is free money to the banks. And even now today, it's amazing because if you look at the major banks and most banks out there, what do they pay on their checking accounts? What do they pay on their savings accounts? They pay shit. Even though interest rates have gone up tremendously, they still pay you shit in most accounts. So don't worry about the banking crisis or whatever. But sentiment-wise, that's what people are going to default to, and that's why you're seeing even a further sell-off in banks today. So, could we pull back further? Absolutely. We know there's stocks that are expensive. To me, it was always mind-boggling how we had a 19-20p on stocks, which is fine. Overall, if you look at history, that's very expensive. That's a very expensive multiple. However, it's not an expensive multiple when interest rates are zero. Interest rates are no longer zero. Interest rates went up tremendously, and now we're trading at a higher multiple. We should be trading at 18, 19 times forward earnings. That's fine. But if we see the pullback, there's going to be lots of opportunity, especially if interest rates come down. And what do we know about pullbacks? They happen right away. And then we see this big ramp up because the government's afraid to allow a recession, right? Then, I don't know, the playbook for that is never ever allow a recession ever, even though that's a normal course of business. It happens every 5 to 6 years, normal, historically. We don't allow recessions anymore because the government comes out and just continues to spend money and make sure it doesn't allow the system to take care of itself. If banks get over leveraged, I'm not talking about the credit crisis. You needed a bailout there. The whole financial system would have collapsed globally, and we'd still have 40% unemployment rate today. But you're probably going to see a pretty quick pullback, and it's going to be a good opportunity to buy because there's companies that are definitely getting it done, and there's companies that are not. And it's going to provide a really great opportunity to buy a lot of great names in all the spaces, in technology and oil and all this stuff. And then we've seen oil finally coming back, but what a sell-off in oil, right? I mean, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, several factors there. Everybody's worried about an economic slowdown. I understand that. I have been wrong on the direction of oil. You can email me, Daniel@CurzioResearch.com. Although several picks related to natural gas and oil, while down, are holding up very well. So I'm not fearful of that. I'm not being arrogant and stubborn. It is an election year. We're very close to election. The China slowdown in oil demand is a real theme. Production isn't going through the roof. Wars and rumors of wars. I couldn't be more bullish on oil and gas here. And in the short term, if the price wants to drop to 65 or even 60, that's fine. What's wild about that is, like I said, I keep coming back to this simple chart. I'm a simple person. We've showed that graph from Statista several times. The only time oil demand globally dropped anywhere close to 10% was because of government forceful lockdowns of the economy. And that was a 10% pullback in overall demand. So let's assume, and that's not a very far jog. So if we're at 100 million barrels in demand last year, and we don't go down near as much as people are anticipating, and production isn't rising as much as some people are thinking or fearing it will, what do you have? You have a balancing out, and I think that those prices are going to be high. Especially, I don't think it's a coincidence, and again, it's all short-lived. There's an eternity between now and the election. However, if you don't think the markets are reacting to both CPI data and the bump ups in Kamala Harris versus debates, I would disagree with that. And that's going to hurt some commodity prices in the short term, especially gold, Bitcoin, and oil. But those three, I would continue to allocate towards, no problem on that.
Yeah. And look, whatever side of the aisle you're on with politics, you want to make sure that you're making money for your family, right? That's first and foremost, the most important thing. We all have strong opinions about shit, but as long as we don't see a clean sweep on either side in terms of, Congress, we should be okay in terms of policy. I think it gets very, 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 very dangerous if we see, especially if we see with some of the policies where we want to give away, 50,000 to homeowners, just hand them a check for new homeowners. Again, it's not going to move the needle at all. It's not going to do anything. I mean, there's not a demand problem with houses, it's a supply problem. So we need more houses built. But it's, as long as we see that, which is highly likely where we see a split government, we should be okay with a lot of these policies. But it is going to matter. You're seeing a portfolio where you're going to see more money pushed towards maybe alternative energy, less money where people might be fearful of crypto here. I will say this. I don't know if you saw the news with the regulatory approval where they had with tZERO.
Yep, I did see that.
Right? Got FINRA approval, custody, one of the only...
SEC and FINRA approved.
It's FCC and FINRA approved to be digitalized platform. I think one of two companies. It's fantastic news for us because we trade on that platform for our Curzio token. And I was... Again, I hate to say early to the party because I really fractional ownership of stock, which is tokenization, is the most brilliant, greatest trend I think we could ever see. We're talking about, tens, if not hundreds of trillions in assets when you look at real estate and bonds of how this could impact, where you're providing a liquidity across the board. But we haven't seen it in the past few years. But now that is a huge, huge deal that they got that regulation, which is great. And I'm hoping, seriously, if we see Democrats and they win, I hope they look at the money coming into crypto and how many people love crypto. You need regulations. The greatest and best companies want regulation in the industry, want it regulated because there is a lot of bullshit and you're going to weed out the bullshit. But the technology in that sector and how it challenges the banks, which has never been disrupted by technology ever, right? You have this boys club of the four banks that can never be challenged. If you want proof of that, just look at New York Community Bank. New York Community Bank did nothing wrong. They were able to get assets from whatever bank. It might have been Signature, I forget what it was, or Silvergate. And they went over the $100 billion in assets. And once they did, their requirements for the capital ratios increase. So they increased automatically, which means they had to take money directly off the bottom line to cover that. And it looks like there's a run on the freaking bank because their earnings crashed. Then the thing actually sold off. So they make it on purpose, the rules of the government, which is one of the only industries this is allowed to, is we have four major banks and no one's ever going to be able to challenge them. Crypto challenges them. It challenges the massive fee structures of these companies where JP Morgan, $50 billion plus net income they're going to generate. Holy shit, right? All fees, net interest, all this crap, right? Crypto disrupts that market. And seeing the money coming into that sector from the donations, from lobbying and things like that, hopefully they take it a lot more seriously and stop illegally attacking this industry, illegally closing 2 banks, the major banks that never did anything, illegally telling every bank, don't ever do anything with crypto or we're going to audit you. There's actually tapes of this. This is called Operation Choke Point 2. So hopefully, when it comes to crypto, and you're seeing even gold get hit, right? Gold's getting hit as well. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out, but you have to have your portfolio structured correctly. And right now, you should have a little cash on the sidelines because you're going to see some of these names come down. A lot of stocks come down. It's going to provide a great opportunity because even the great names get hit in markets like this. Like an example, if you look at AMD, is not an AI play. Okay, they're not an AI play. They say they're an AI play. They're not an AI play. Not yet. Maybe they will become one. They're not, right? If you look at some of these other names, Supermicro has come down, accounting issues. But yet, if you look at Oracle, holy shit. Did you see those numbers? Did you listen to the comments? Daniel and I are going to break this down in tomorrow's podcast and give you ideas of what's going on with data centers, power, and the story that nobody's telling you. People are like, oh, we're going to use a lot more power. You have no idea. Believe me, you have no idea. Wait till tomorrow's podcast. Seriously, it's going to be fantastic because the stats and the insights that we have and the context that we have in that industry, it's unbelievable of how unprepared we are in terms of data centers and the massive data center growth. And I think when you saw Larry Ellison's comments yesterday, it surprised the shit out of people. Thousands of these things are being built, how they're being built, what these companies, the Mag 7 companies are doing in terms of where they're building these data centers, how they're perfectly structured, how they're Gen 4, which are now 8-story buildings. These things are massive. And the amount of electricity use where they're going to get bigger and bigger, having insight into that industry and especially doing a lot of research over it on it, it's incredible. We're going to go over a lot of picks and go into the details. And I'm sure we're going to shock you because there's things that really, just like we said with China for the past year, it's like a depression in China. Everyone's like, no, China's okay. It's okay. China is a disaster. China's a disaster. And there's sources out there that are saying, even with the troops, they'll give it, like you have China. I don't know if you knew this, Daniel. So you have China where their military is now fighting in Russia. Does anybody know that? Does anybody know that? Do you know that China has troops that have just went into India? Does anybody know that? Right? So you look at how bad things are in China. It's the sources that we have. It's great. This podcast, thank you so much. It goes out to over 125 countries. We're now approaching 15 million downloads. That network is incredibly powerful with the information we get, and it's awesome. And it's not about us having an agenda. It's about getting the stories right. And the contacts that we have help us out tremendously because this is real-time stuff. This is real. You don't have to worry about the fucking news and all the bullshit that they're going to tell you who has an agenda. We don't have an agenda. Nobody pays us. We're fine. We're going to tell you what we hear, what we know, and that's why we were well ahead of the curve of COVID. It's why we're well ahead of the curve in China. And wait till you hear about this power thing. I mean, with our sources and things that are going on. I just recently talked to Amir Nani as well, who's at conferences that sold out tremendously around Europe. And who was there? Who was at these conferences? Who's meeting with him? Take a guess. Microsoft, Tesla, all the hyperscalers. All of them are at uranium conferences and energy conferences right now. Is that a coincidence? Absolutely not. So we're going to break that down tomorrow, and that's going to be a Wall Street Unplugged Premium podcast, which is pretty cool. But holy cow, Oracle and Larry Ellison, just listen to that conference call of what he says about data centers. We have great insights into certain shortages that are happening, which certain companies provide these specific components, and they're on 6-month backlog, and none of the data centers will work without them in terms of cooling. So great ideas. So everyone's taking this massive sell-off in technology, Daniel, but you're looking at it, there's several of these stocks within a particular industry and technology that provide these types of components that are near 52-week highs, and they're going to go a lot higher because they have massive pricing power, and you have the biggest companies in the world all jockeying for position to build these data centers as quick as they can. We're going to go over a lot of ideas with you tomorrow, which should be pretty exciting. So
that's right. Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Wall Street Unplugged Premium.
Tomorrow. Wall Street Unplugged Premium. So, guys, listen, the takeaways here is the debate was a big deal. You're seeing it in certain stock prices. You're seeing it in certain industries. Let's see if that change turns around. But, you should have some dry power here. the market does come down. We see September, October, usually 2-week months, and then going into the next 2 months, usually do very, very well. We'll see with the election in November, but it's going to give you an opportunity. You're going to see a lot of great names get hit. We saw Oracle pull back a little bit. That's in our portfolio. Now it went up. Now it's pretty sure it's near its all-time high. It's just a lot of good opportunities. Should NVIDIA be selling off the way it's selling off? Should it be trading at the same multiple as Procter & Gamble when they're growing earnings by 100% when Procter & Gamble's barely growing, right? Maybe low single digits. Should they be trading at the same multiple? So you're going to see, even in AI, you're going to see the separation, which you're starting to see. It's going to provide really good buying opportunities for you and across different sectors in retail and everything. And that's how we want to position. That's what this podcast is for, to make sure we're positioning in the right places to make the most money based on everything that's going on in the world. And you're going to see lots of changes, lots of rotations going on, especially with the election just around the corner. So Daniel,
well said.
Talked a lot about, I don't know.
45 minutes in, Frank.
45 minutes in. We got a lot in there.
That's right.
Right? So I don't know. We could talk football.
Send us your thoughts on the debate.
We could talk football.
Ugh.
How bad are the Giants? Holy shit, how bad are the Giants? Giants and the Jets, New York. I don't know why everyone thinks the Jets are going to be good. You can't just snap your fingers, hire a couple of people, and you're going to be good all of a sudden. Yeah, it's just, I mean, they got annihilated. It looked horrible. They have a 40-year-old quarterback. Just they're expecting, again, he's amazing. He's one of the best quarterbacks that ever lived in terms of arm strength and everything. He's just amazing. But you can't, he's just coming off an injury at 40, and everyone's like, this guy's going to sling like 3 touchdowns, and their defense is amazing. It's all about continuity. It's all about playing together. I mean, if you look at the Lakers had the greatest team ever assembled, and they couldn't win under any coach until they brought over Phil Jackson. So if you don't think Phil Jackson's a great coach, it matters. Coaching matters. Continuity matters. Bringing all these guys together and being able to play together, it's hard. Maybe they build that up, but the Giants, how did they pay Daniel Jones? Holy shit. Let's go Eagles. Should have lost that freaking game, but let's go Eagles. Hopefully their offense looks great. But other than that, I think we covered everything today, Daniel. I don't know if you have any final parting thoughts.
No. No more from me.
No more from Mr. Creech, but we'll have a lot to talk about tomorrow, guys, on Wall Street Unplugged Premium. So thank you so much for listening. Really appreciate all your support, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care. Love this episode of Wall Street Unplugged? I think you'll really love Wall Street Unplugged Premium. The Wall Street Unplugged Premium is my members-only podcast where I dive even deeper into this week's events. Well, I'll do even more than tell you what's moving these markets. I'll tell you specifically what moves you can make today. So this is going to be about trading. Put big money in your pocket right away due to the inconsistencies I see daily in the market. I'm talking about specific investment ideas I'm recommending and tracking each week that I believe will be impacted directly by everything I just talked about today. Plus, you're going to get the chance to go even further down the rabbit hole with me and my co-host, who's Daniel Creech, as we discuss which of these week's trends could turn into massive windfalls. Could the big trends that we see lurking on the horizon, also the news we're picking up from our network of insiders, which has gotten bigger and bigger thanks to you and so many people listening to this podcast in over 100 countries. And you get a chance to talk to me directly in my special Ask Me Anything Q&A session. All of that and a lot more, like premium interviews with world leaders in finance, technology, industry, and politics. This is all part of Wall Street Unplugged Premium. And becoming a member is super simple and super cheap. So head on over to WSUoffer.com to check it all out. Sign up today, and you won't miss a thing. That's WSUoffer.com.
Wall Street Unplugged is produced by Curzio Research, one of the most respected financial media companies in the industry. The information presented on Wall Street Unplugged is the opinion of its host and guests. You should not base your investment decisions solely on this broadcast. Remember, it's your money and your responsibility.